Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for clicking today to watch the FiredUp Casey Show. Welcome again. I am your host, Zeke Gang, and today I have the highest connected in Kansas City, Mr. Scott Havens himself, the man, the myth, the legend in the house today. I am honored to have you in the house today. For those of you who do not know Mr. Scott, he is one of the elite business people in Kansas City. He knows all the top executives. He actually was listed on Ingram's 40 on the 40 this year. Congratulations to you on that. So, Mr.
Thank
Scott,
you.
without further ado, can I let people know a little bit about what you do and more about yourself?
My parents met in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Kansas City. Oh, okay, not that one.
Not that
No, I
one.
got
Not
I got
that
my
one.
start in Kansas City, knocking door to door. It's a company called Worldwide Express,
Okay.
and if you cold call, people that cold call in person with one question,
Mm,
and that question is how often do you get new shoes? And if you are cold calling, it's typically 3 to 5 months, because when you
okay.
get out of a car, the left sole has to turn as you get out of the car.
Yes.
So the left sole of your shoe will wear out typically in 3 to 5 months. So my goal was always 3 to 3.5.
Wow.
And so I cold called the metro, 2.5 million people, 71,000 companies. So
Wow.
everything from Raymore Peculiar, Sedalia, St. Joe, Leavenworth, Orange, Baldwin, and everything in between, and really learned Kansas City, an inch deep and a mile wide.
Mm,
And then about 8 years ago, started working with a firm called Trust
okay.
that ultimately ended up selling in August of last year to Hub. And Hub International is the largest privately held insurance firm in the country. And I like to be really cheesy and salesy and say my wife and I are two of the youngest shareholders in the world. I don't know if that's true, but I think we're one of the younger ones, but it
That's true
works.
for now. Let's say that's true for now.
And I run 11 peer groups, sit on 6 boards, and do 2 podcasts. And that's how we met, because I'm
Wow.
a fan of your show.
I'm a
And
fan of
then when
you
we got a
too, because
chance to talk, I love your story of how you started your show. And
thank
so I'm so happy to be on.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I want to ask you this. Do you ever sleep? Because, like, you mentioned, like, 150 things you do. Like, do you ever take a nap and sleep? Do you rest?
So one thing I realized early on in my career was the majority of people graduating in the financial accounting realm
Mm-hmm.
were women. And I saw a big shift
Yeah.
in what was going to be the CFO role. And for what I do for a living, CFOs make the decisions on healthcare.
Okay.
And so my partner and I saw an opportunity to partner. We're the only co-ed team in Kansas City. And we have done really well with partnering with a lot of women leaders of organizations and growing our business to offer them healthcare.
Okay.
So 100% of my time is growing the business, and 100% of her time is focusing on the business with our clients.
Okay.
So we split our income equally, as opposed to what people traditionally do. But what we found is that our clients have 24/7 care,
Okay.
and I'm doing 24/7 business development. So I'm very lucky, because my business partner, Melissa Oliva, is amazing. Single mom, 2 kids, soon to be one of the biggest books of business of any woman in Kansas City. So without that partnership, I'm not able to focus 100% of my attention on business development.
Now, I think that's a really good point brought up there, because I think people don't think about the right business partner. When you go into business, you have to have the right person who knows what they're doing. Because if you don't, I mean, you have to work all the time, and that's really good. Now, there's something you said about cold calling, because I've heard a lot about cold calling. I've heard negative things about cold calling, but like, tell me a little bit about what it was like. What was your experience? What would be one experience you had cold calling that you would remember and be like, that was the moment that it clicked for me back in the days?
So there's a scale,
Okay.
and here is, you're really wealthy and your parents have lots of connections and you're 3 generations deep. Here is, no one.
Okay. That's
If you
kind of
know
where.
no one, if you don't know anyone, you got a cold call.
Mm,
And it's the worst option, but if it's all you got, it's what you have to do.
okay.
And so it was all I had. So, I've been fortunate to sit on panels and the quote that sticks with a lot of people that I use, and I don't know why it sticks, but I always tell people that for the first 4 or 5 years of my career, no one wanted to meet with me because I wasn't worth meeting with. I didn't know anyone. I couldn't help them. I was just someone cold calling to try to get business. And so, but over time, when you meet enough people and
Yeah.
you do your best to drive value, you develop a network. And as you develop a network, that network can help and grow others. And it's what you're doing at an incredibly young age. And it's why I'm such a big fan of yours and always want to stay in touch with you, is because when you figure it out at a young age, it's very valuable. Most people don't figure it out until their late 40s, early 50s, etc. And so cold calling is the option of last resort,
Yeah.
but you have two options. Pick a life and set expectations, or pick a life with cold calling where your expectations could be anything you want. If you can cold call and you can create your own network and you can create your own destiny and your own sales and your own pipeline, you can do whatever you want. Now, if you don't want to get rejected 99 times out of 100, which most people don't, then you can have a life in the business world, but
Yeah.
it's going to be predetermined, meaning your ceiling is only going to be so high.
Okay.
It's going to be a long road, and there's a lot of politics involved. So one is blaze your own path through a lot of really horrible hard work.
Yeah.
And one is take the other path over 30 years and eventually get there. One's shorter than another one.
Now let me ask you this, because I think what you've been able to accomplish is awesome. Like being on the Ingram 40 on the 40, that one I thought was like, dang, okay, okay. I want to ask you this, because I have heard this. I don't know if it's a quote, but it's basically that the challenge is not the goal, it's the motivation behind it. It's what inspires you to do what you do. So I want to ask you, like coming up as a young person, what was your goal? What did you want to accomplish? What was your goal, like as a young person calling people up? What was your ultimate end that you wanted?
See, this is a great question, but I'm going to, after I answer it, I want you to answer the question on what your motivation is.
Okay.
I know a little bit of it, but I always say, what's the chip on your shoulder? And I actually had a coffee this morning. Someone asked me that question, and I never thought I'd graduate college because it was hard. I was a horrible student. I always thought I was dumb. I was always in special classes growing up, so I struggled reading, struggled at math. And then when I was 27 years old or 28, I was doing a walk around my apartment with my, I was living with my fiance at the time, and I was listening to a Malcolm Gladwell podcast, and it talked about dyslexia. And I don't run, and I ran home to my fiance at the time. I said, "Julie, am I dyslexic?" And she said, "Yes, that makes a ton of sense." I went to my business partner, "Melissa, am I dyslexic?" "Oh my God, yeah, I think you are." And so for me, I never realized it throughout any of my education. And so my goal was literally to make $40,000 a year and to maybe have a company car. That was it.
Wow.
And in my mind, I was saying, how if I did this and I spent my money this way and I did this, maybe, by the time I'm 40 years old, maybe I can make $100,000 a year and have a family, but I just need to be really disciplined. And because I thought the only thing I could do. I thought that was my pinnacle. I didn't think I could achieve anything more than that. And then I just realized that, I got stuck at a job that no one would take, which was cold calling all throughout the metro. And then I developed a work ethic of a 12-hour workday and a tenacity for being rejected. And I got lucky and I got put into a position in the insurance world. So people that know a lot about money know that insurance, banking, real estate, financial advising, there's a lot of reoccurring wealth that you can really grow.
Okay.
I didn't know that. I just stumbled into it, and I got made fun of by people I went to college with that I was in that industry.
Okay.
And if it wasn't for those people making fun of me, I don't think I would have, the drive and the chip on my shoulder would have been there to achieve what I've achieved today, or been lucky to with partners. But it was because, and still what motivates me today is I want to prove people wrong that made fun of me and didn't think I could accomplish it. So that's a long-winded way of kind of explaining I didn't know I could do it. And then when I found out I could do it, I got made fun of. And then I was like, well, screw you guys. I'm going to go bring it and go from there. So my question for you is, I know a lot of your aspirations, but why are you motivated so much to put yourself out there? Why are you so motivated to maybe get rejected? Why are you so motivated to build a brand at such a young age?
Honestly, that's an awesome question. I think for me, just as a young person, it's it's either now or never for me. I have seen a lot of people who have accomplished a lot in their life, and I feel like they came to a point in their life where they drew a mark on the sand, like a line on the sand, and said, I'm over this line. I'm not going back." I read a book. I don't know if it's Think and Grow Rich, but it talked about this captain that went to a war and literally he said that they burnt their boats. Like they burnt all the boats and said that this war we're gonna either win or we die here. And they won that war because they burnt the boat. So for me, that's my mindset. It's like this is all I want to do and this is how I have to go. Like there's no option B for me. And that's just how my brain is wired for myself. And this is what I want to do because um earlier I've been trying to, trying to impress people and be take the title of this title or that title. I'm just like, nah, I don't really care about those titles anymore. I want to be effective and create something that other people in the future will look back and be like, you know what, this is why I'm here today because that guy took a risk, that guy failed because he learned this and he taught us how to do this. Now I can be better. So that is my motivation as a person to be able to be that person who can teach other people how to make it happen and make it faster for them. So that's what I want to do, and that's what I'm trying to do. But with connecting with a legend like yourself, who has already gone way ahead of me, and me being able to learn from your experience and from your wisdom, and just being a sponge. That's literally all I do. I'm just a sponge, learning from my mentors, learning from yourself, and all you do, man. I just get inspired by seeing your work. So yeah, that's my motivation.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you mentioned. I call that the safety net concept. And so
Mm,
when we're hiring and we're looking for people, and as a student, and you're working with a lot of young people, and you're going to be getting a lot of people jobs because they're going to reach out to Zeke and say, "Hey, Zeke, you're connected. How do you know?" And people that have a safety net,
mm,
you probably don't want to hire them
yeah.
because they just aren't going to go for broke. Now it depends upon the position. If we're talking about a sales position or a position that requires 60, 70 hours of work, or is just really, it's just it's a grind.
Yeah.
Hiring people with a safety net's a horrible idea
Mm,
because you need someone that's going to go for broke and get through the tough times and grind it. And sometimes because they have no other option. I feel comfortable you and I saying that because that's our thought process.
exactly.
Some people maybe we can't say that of others because that's not always ideal. But if you got nothing to lose, you're great. I mean, people that we know that have nothing to lose are great hires because they're going to go for broke.
Yeah.
Someone brought up a quote today: VIP, visible, influential, and performance.
Okay.
And so you're being visible and you're creating influential connections. The performance side is where the cold calling comes in, and that's where, if you want to be a total package, you can do that, or you find a partner for where your shortcomings are. For me, it wasn't so much on the performance, taking care of the clients. That's why I partnered with someone, and
Mm-hmm.
so my partner partnered with me for visibility and for influence, and
Mm,
together we really do well. And one thing you have to touch on, and especially today with everything going on in the country, my comment to you is going to be, well, I was broke. Well, I wasn't really broke. If you want to talk about white privilege and having two parents that live in the same city
mm-hmm.
and being able to live at their house, and if I was broke, I may not have been able to pay my car insurance or my cell phone, but I still had a place to stay.
Yeah.
And so everyone has a different version of broke. I realize my version of broke is very it was very fortunate, and it
Mm-hmm.
was very privileged to have that. And but everyone has a different version of what broke is, or what going for broke is. And so I don't want to make it sound like I
Yeah.
was was grinding it out in a different circumstance. I had a huge leg up by, going to a public school and then going to university. And so I was lucky. But when I graduated, my job was waiting tables at the Blue Moose.
Mm.
I couldn't get a job bartending because those jobs were too hard to get. And
Yeah.
so I had to serve college graduates that I went to school with, that had engineering jobs or that had medical sales jobs, and it was really gut wrenching. But again, it wasn't like a road that many others have to take. So I want to make sure that I'm um, uh, giving context to what my
Yeah.
version of broke is.
And it's really good that you brought that up because I think a lot of people miss that when it comes to understanding how people be in different levels of being broke, different situations, different uh, mindset, and I think that's where a lot of people do not understand when people talk about having it a white privilege or being able to be in a community where things are not really accessible to you, and it's like people often blame people who say, "Oh, I was broke too. I grinded and got up," but like it's on a different level though. Like it's a whole different level. It's a whole different dynamic. For me personally, I am an international student. I came into the US as a middle class, I would say, because I have opportunity of going to school where a lot of people did not have that access of coming into that way. So it's a whole different dynamic. When a lot of motivational speakers say, grind it out, just go broke but when people are already at negative 20,000 and counting, it's hard to think that way. So it's like being able to understand the different dynamics is always something I think is important in business and being able to think about the future. So I think it's awesome to bring it up.
Do you know Father Justin
I
of
actually have him. Yeah, we actually was supposed to schedule an interview also on. So it's having him on my show too.
So he's going to be on Drinks with Leaders, the show
Okay.
you were on with Aaron Folk and I today, and he is a wonderful at explaining the Kansas City hierarchy. And for me, he broke it down to 10 rungs of a ladder. And very rarely do you achieve one rung above or one rung below.
Mm,
And if you get two or three above, it's crazy. Awesome. If you get 2, 3 below, it's crazy bad. But it's hard to go one or above. So if you're on rung 0, 1, or 2, it's all
yeah.
perspective and
Yeah.
understanding what that is. And for instance, if you don't understand that wealth resides from the plaza to 151st on
Exactly.
state line,
Mhm.
you're probably not in the know.
Mhm.
And a lot of decisions are made there, and it's unfair because
Mhm.
the only way to get to those decisions or get to those decision makers is to be able to find a way in the door to be accepted and whatever it means to be accepted in that world. And it's a lot easier for some than it is for others. So when I give the context of privilege, it's for me, I wasn't anywhere near that area, but it's not nearly as hard for me to find my way in there because of the situation I grew up in, and being white, being a male,
Yeah.
there's certain things that you have advantages in doing, and people just sometimes lose context of what it means to be broke. There's very different levels of broke.
Yeah.
There are levels for me it was cold calling door to door, and I realized I need to quit telling that story because a lot of people see that as, well, that's great, but look at you. That's not me. If I
Mhm.
went door to door, I wouldn't have the same opportunities you did. And so it's kind of interesting. And so
Mm.
today's conversations that are going on are wildly beneficial,
Yes.
and business leaders that can really just take time to listen and not have any comments, but just listen
Yes.
and listen for years, not just listen for a week and have an opinion. I think the people that really get a better understanding of the next generation in the workforce and their current workforce
Yes.
are going to crush it in
Mm.
business,
Mm.
and they're going to do really well if they understand, how we all can achieve greater things.
Yeah, I mean, also, I think it's awesome that you are brought this up because it's going to be a cool transition into our next conversation, which is basically talking about, having diversity in a workplace or being able to, have those conversations that lead to people understand that there are different levels to this. And I think 2020 has been, people say it's a year from hell or something like that. It's like Jumanji, open the book. And it's like all the things are crawling out. Nothing is safe. But I think the one thing 2020 has been able to expose is making us to have those hard conversations where it's not just saying, "Oh, we are a diverse company," but then at the core of it, at the executive level of it, it's not really what it is, and the opportunities are not the same. And also coming to Kansas City as a whole, because I used to live on Truce, and then when I lived on Truce, like it's a whole different world. Going from where I lived on Truce to where the university at UMKC is, it's a whole different world. Like it's like you cross a
And
different.
you only went one street over.
I only went one street over. So like the more you go down to Prospect, it gets worse. It's like what is going on? But those are things that people do not understand. And I think another thing that I really love, I think it was my first year at school. I took an architecture class that talked about redlining. I didn't know that was a thing, and it still happens today underneath. So I think there is a conversation that are helpful for people to understand what's going on. So I don't know your thoughts about that.
Yeah, until the 1960s, it was legal to discriminate. And then once it became illegal to discriminate, there was redlining. And so, then, you also need to learn about 71 Highway and what that did to the neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
And, there is so much history that plays into it. And a lot of people, like, for instance, you wanted to talk about the recent ban for that ICE came out with,
Yes.
that students would need to go back to their country of origin if they were going to be completely online.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Zeke, I don't really want to talk about it. I don't know enough about it. On its face, that sounds crazy. Why would anyone do that? I'm assuming that there's a way that that's not going to happen, or I hope. But when it comes to systemic racism in Kansas City, I do have the knowledge of it because I have a weird history bug.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when people get a chance to understand the whole process from 1900s, or really the early 1800s to today,
Yes.
you can, it's people just aren't willing to understand that it is people have been persecuted for generations,
Just being
and
alive.
it wasn't, and it's not like fighting a fight with one arm behind your back. In many cases, it was fighting a fight with two arms behind your back. And so people just kind of need to understand the full scope of it. And also on the other side, people that you have people that think, hey, if you just work hard you can do anything. And then you have some people that think it was completely rigged. And well, it's what it was, a little rigged. But the point is you got to understand the whole conversation to really understand it. And Kansas City is no different than many other cities, but we are unique in terms of our geography. And when you're talking about going from J.C. Nichols Parkway, which is interesting to Truce,
Exactly.
two things that mean a lot. One will probably I don't know if the Parkway is going to get renamed, but that geography is super interesting because Truce and Prospect were not those were beautiful suburban neighborhoods, the up and coming, the movers and shakers, the community leaders. And through the practices from the 1950s and really maybe even 40s to today, it's been so unfairly treated. Yeah. So Zeke, what I'm saying is, and I don't know enough to speak intelligently on the topic, is we think of redlining, but there are 10, 20 other examples of discrimination that also occurred. So there's a lot that plays into it. Redlining and J.C. Nichols is kind of the tip of the spear that everyone thinks of. I'm not a historian and I don't claim to be one, but I really enjoy researching it because you really learn a lot about the haves and have-nots of Kansas City. And for me personally, it's still that way in business today. And so you have to understand the ecosystem of how things get done. And you also want to understand the history so that if there is an opportunity to improve or to help make sure something doesn't happen, that you understand the conversation. And so, for you as someone that's is a community leader, it's going to continue to be a community leader, I think you would, since, and you grew up on, I mean, you lived on Truce, you currently at UMKC, you would love the topic because there are so many elementary schools and high schools that were the best schools in the country that no longer exist today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, you look at Southwest High School that's in Brookside, and Brookside's a super wealthy area, but at one point in time, that was like the high school.
Mm-hmm.
Westport High School. There's so many, it's so interesting.
Yeah.
And you really get into white flight and it kind of, there's so much history in there.
Yeah.
So, and it helps understand what's going on today.
Also, speaking more on the, just a little bit more, because so many people might not have seen the news yet, but basically the ICE thing that happened, it just happened yesterday on Monday, and that, announcement literally shook my feet because I'm an international student, and hearing that, and I'm like, whoa, it's hard enough.
Well, give everyone the context. Where'd you grow up, and if this law were to take place, where would you have to move?
So, given a big context, I grew up in one of the poorest towns in Nigeria. Literally, I had to go through floods almost every week to go to school. And I didn't grow up on the rich side. I actually was like in a really, really poor neighborhood. So if this were to happen and actually international were to go back home, because I've hustled all my life, being able to work to get here, that means going back to that environment without having anything on hand, like no degree, no income, especially now with the COVID. I'm already on negative. I'm on a lot of negatives because of the pandemic. Because usually when I'm in school, I'm making money through school and working on campus and doing all those things. But now it's like I'm hoping to have school open back and forth so I can get back and start, paying off all the things that I've been able to accrue. So if this were to actually happen, that would leave me and a lot of other students in this advantage of like, yo, we got to pack and go with nothing and negative, nothing to hold on to. And it's going to be even way worse because I've been in the US for 4 years now. So a lot of things have changed. I don't even know where to go back to or what I'm going to go face. So it's a tough experience on my end. Just looking at it and seeing it, it scares me because I don't know what I'm going to do. And I've been so much, talking about Kansas City as a whole, a lot of international students. I've never met one international student who's not hardworking on my campus. I've never met one person. And you talk about people who put their hours just to be able to improve a community, improve companies. And it's just having this kind of thing happen to us is really heartbreaking because we fight for America because we literally are like, I'm on, trying to educate people and then all this happens and it's heartbreaking. So that's kind of where I stand on it. It's really touching to me, where I and other international students out there are working hard to make sure that everything is moving. Even though this is a hard time, pandemic has been hard, but still we're staying strong and keep pushing and not stop. And then we have to be let go. It's just unfair,
Yeah, and I think, and we won't get into detail, but you emailed someone at your school and they mentioned that there could be a form of doing a class in person, which would not make it totally online. And so, I think there's confidence in being that, but what a crazy, I have no idea why that would even occur, but I understand why that's on your heart and your mind right now. To take in a little different direction, we're talking about different levels of broke, and we're talking about, walking through floods.
Yeah.
And then, living in mom and dad's basement in X $100,000 home, there's different levels.
Yes.
And so do you know what the entry point into the 1%? So 99% of people make less, 1% makes the most in the state of Missouri, the entry point.
No, what is it?
So how much money they make annual household income?
Probably a million.
Okay, it's $420,000.
Okay. Wow.
So in Kansas, it's 390. That's the entry point. So over half the country makes under $50,000 a year in household income. And so there's no taxes associated with that. So understanding, because they're working, they have payroll taxes and they're paying and they're spending money. Yeah. Half of GDP is the consumer spending. So people just having perspective and understanding that $50,000 is what half the country makes. And then to get to 400 for Missouri, 420, and Kansas 390, people oftentimes think that, the 1% makes $10 million. It depends what state you're in. Maybe that's not even the 1% in San Francisco, or maybe that's not the 1% in New York. But having context and understanding, and then when we're talking about the question of redlining, well, when people start understanding local history and they start understanding local financials and what it means and getting perspective, it really helps put things into place of where we all sit and what we all need to do to achieve to where we're going. So back to you're talking about cold calling. Where do you sit in that world? And if you're backed into a corner and that's all you got, then that's what you have to do. And you then need to figure out, well, what area, what industry, or what vertical do I need to do that to? And when you're saying, you need more diversity around the table so that people can get exposure and opportunity to say, hey, you should go in the educational space, K through 12, and sell computer software. Or, hey, there's pet vaccines and you should go work at this company in Blue Springs. Or, hey, you're in Lenexa and you're doing logistics. Hey, you should really look at this warehouse and look for the opportunity to manage and develop software over here. And so just having an understanding of the ecosystem locally is, I think, the most important thing for what people are doing. And for students that are international students, is looking for those pockets of where they can succeed. Because right now you're in the university, you're only exposed to what you're exposed to. But finding that vein or that narrow niche to where you can make a lot of money, if that's what you want to do, is something that we all can do a better job on, and why conversations like you and I are having, so we can connect people, because there's companies that need talent. They need hardworking recent college graduates to go kick butt.
And I really want to say that, just backtrack a little bit about cold calling. There's this thing that people like to work with people that like they're people like people who are like them, right? So talking about cold calling and being able to see that dynamic, or being able to initiate conversations, it's a different culture. It's different. People would like to interact with people that look more like them or act more like them. And it's also hard, being an international student or being, a minority. It's a whole different space for you to be able to get to where people want to be like, you know what, I want to do business with you because you are more like me. So it's a whole, chipping onto this thing that is so big. So I think that's another thing too that people, I think.
Yeah, are we dancing around the topic of basically saying that there are people that that could be discriminating because if you show, so it's like, you speak and you're like, hey, I'm not from South Carolina. I'm from, so it's, I get it. No, I know what you're talking about, because, for me, having a deep voice and being from the Midwest, I have a very what you would call non-threatening, to some people, they would concede that, we're talking in context here. And so, when you're calling with your accent, they're gonna be like, their subconscious, I don't want to say inappropriate thoughts, but that may, or for me, I was reminiscing about cold calling, because I would dress up in a suit and tie every day, 0 degrees or 100 degrees, and so you'd usually have to have 2 suit jackets because you'd sweat through both of them. It's July, but that was what you had to do, and I had no other option. But I totally get what you're saying, because you're like sitting there going like, I don't want a cold call because people may like not even take me serious. And it's kind of like young people. It's like, young people aren't taken serious because they're like, what do you know about business? So it's kind of that topic of, white privilege again, where it's like, people talk about, I'm broke and you got to grind. Well, how broke are you compared to the perspective of everyone else? And so, but for you, Zeke, you got to understand all of it, and then come prepared when you do go into what you're trying to accomplish, knowing all the angles, knowing what everyone's thinking, how you're going to approach it. And then there's certain tricks of the trade to overcome those, so that people aren't putting you in a box, because that's not what you want, and that's what we all try to avoid.
Yeah, I mean, I think like you said, I think it should get better on both sides, where you know, people like myself and our students, or maybe people minorities in the United States, don't have to always be the ones who have to change themselves or educate themselves to get hired in top companies. Where it should be the other way around too, where top companies should educate themselves about hiring people of minorities and be able to understand that someone's name and their accent doesn't mean they're not smart. That someone looks a different way doesn't mean that they don't know what they're doing. It's just being able to understand that people are different and have different cultures, but also are ready to work, are ready to get on the grind. So I think it's something that has happened on both sides. Because on my side, I've been working on understanding that, that trend of being able to be in rooms where I am uncomfortable because I need to be in those rooms. Because if I'm not there, no one is going to be there. So I think it should happen on both sides to be able to have this, be successful. Um, but
So I 100% agree with you, and you're absolutely right. And that we're back to the point of where we're talking about, employers and leaders that are understanding this holistic conversation are going to really do well in the
mm-hmm,
coming years. Not like 10 years from now, like 6 months from now,
mm,
8 months from now, by doing exactly what you're talking about. When you go into cold calling world, it's like real estate. It's like the free market and all the ugly things that come with it. And so, that's the unfortunate thing
yeah,
is you're absolutely right. You want that, but when you're knocking on someone's door and you're going into their business or you're calling them, it's a mean and brutal world. And
mm-hmm,
so, but when you're talking about an organization or hiring or the company, absolute. I mean, the bare minimum is being educated on diversity and inclusion. I mean, that's something that really, in my opinion, everyone over the age of 30 needs to continue. And honestly, without going through the Centurions Leadership Program
mm-hmm,
through the Kansas City Chamber of Commerce, I mean, um, a lot. I thought about doing it because I heard that you had to do it to get well connected in business on top of all the other things.
mm-hmm,
And I went into the program and I never realized it would fundamentally change who I am as a person and how I view things.
mm-hmm,
And so I think people, um, what's going on in the country of having these conversations is wonderful and it's beautiful and it's
mm-hmm,
incredibly important. But I'd also be a total hypocrite that 4 years from now, 4 years ago, I had a total Johnson County mindset, and I don't want to loop anyone that lives. I had my own mindset of growing up in Johnson County that if you didn't achieve success, it's because you didn't work hard. That was how I was raised. I didn't know any better, and so I was always taught from it takes a village from everyone around me that you can achieve anything if
yeah,
you work hard. Well, that's not always true.
mm,
Other people, everyone has different advantages or different things pulling them up or pulling them down. And up until, recently, 4 or 5 years ago, I didn't understand the context of the conversation. So I think you're absolutely right
mm,
in terms of it's actually more important for people that are hiring or that are in the corporate America to understand diversity and inclusion.
yeah,
So I agree with you, but when we're referencing cold calling, it's it's brutal and it's not fair and it's not what it is. And so I don't want to be not understanding or sensitive to that subject. But it's man, it's brand new. I mean, you're right.
mm,
But
yeah,
I'm thinking to myself, 99% of the time, if you're just cold calling, they're going to hang up anyway.
mm-hmm, 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 yeah. I mean, honestly, man, we have touched on some really, really hot topics this morning, and I hope someone watching this is educated. And I want to say this before we move almost to the end of the show. If you are really interested in learning about, diversity and being able to understand the things that hold people back, where it's not just on the facial level.
If you go to 18th and Vine and then you have the Negro Leagues Museum, there's a bookstore that has multiple books on the history of redlining. And then there's the National Black Archives as well. And then Father Justin, which is Delma's Kitchen, one of the best, some of the best food in Kansas City, also is a wonderful resource on the truce and the ground truce originally was. And so there's a lot of really good Kansas City books that talk about it and are really interesting because they're talking about streets that we all drive on today.
Yeah.
And that we're all, but a great point.
So towards the end of we're going towards the end of the show, but I want to really talk about this just a little bit. About just the news that came out yesterday. I think Mahomes just signed a new deal for $500 million, the biggest in the history of NFL ever, for 10 years. And I think Kansas City is finally getting the hype that it deserves. So what do you think about that?
And so, to relate this to our whole conversation?
Yes.
It only takes one person to change the world.
Mm-hmm.
It only takes one person to change a city.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not given the opportunity or the exposure to figure out how to do it, as a country and a society, we are all hurting ourselves, and we're not allowing ourselves to reach our full potential. Dayton Moore single-handedly changed Kansas City and how he brought up the Royals and the organization. And he always says, I'm never going to bring anyone into the organization that I wouldn't bring around my own family. And in football, I always thought there's no way that just, people talk trash. We can never draft a quarterback. I'm like, it's a whole football team. There's so much to it. I'm completely wrong. It only takes one person to change the course of history. And Pat Mahomes, already at 23 or 24, has changed Kansas City forever.
Yeah.
To think that we could have maybe one more in us, a lot, fans are going to go crazy and think, we can win multiple Super Bowls, but just say we win one. That changes Kansas City forever.
Yeah.
And so, people like Dayton Moore and people like Pat Mahomes, people like Quentin Lucas, it just takes one to change the course of our city. And those leaders are just awesome. Like, with everything going on right now, like, tell me, Quentin's a perfect person because he works. I don't know when the guy sleeps, but I never worry about anything in the city because I know he's there. Like, he may not, as a young person, he may not know the best way to approach it, but who cares? Because he's there and he's listening. And so the topic of Pat Mahomes and what I take away from it is it only takes one. It only takes one hire at your company to change everything.
I want to add onto that as well with something you said earlier. Also, it takes one person. It also takes a village, right? A group of people who have been, working towards that, making sure that person gets to where they need to get to. Like you said, if that person doesn't get the opportunity to get there, we wouldn't have a Patrick Mahomes. We wouldn't have a Quentin Lucas. If Kansas City did not come together to elect Quentin Lucas, we wouldn't have him. So it takes one person who stands and says, I'm going to do this, and it takes me and you, the whole Kansas City, saying, yo, we're going for this guy because we believe in what he is going to achieve. So I think that's also important to point that out as well. You want to say something?
Harry Campbell, who's, I think, Joel Goldberg's going to hate me when I say this, but Joel's great at public speaking.
Yeah.
Harry is just, he's awesome. He's really good. And Harry hires people for two things only. Are they curious? And do you like to hang out with them? Because if they're curious, they'll figure it out. If you like hanging out with them or they're fun to be around, you can tolerate it. And that's the only thing he hires on. And he's hired thousands of people. And so for me, I hope more people do it because it only takes one person to change the direction of a company or an organization.
Wow, this is awesome. Well, we have come towards the end of the show. I would just want you to give one last word and also tell people where they can catch you at if they want to connect with you, so you can connect them with those awesome connections that you have so they can link up and learn from you. Just give us one last word for the people from what we've been talking about today, and then give a shout out to yourself and where they can catch you at.
Well, I'm going to give a shout out to you because I'm just a casual fan on LinkedIn. And so I want everyone to know I went and sought you out because I was just like, oh my gosh, how old is he? What is he doing? How do you get this person on the show? And why is he so influential? And so, I guess what what I would say as parting words is people need to genuinely be fans of others and look to help other people, because when you look to serve others, you'll end up serving yourself.
Yeah.
And so hopefully people know that the more that they can help others, the more they're really selfishly helping themselves. And so I'm just being selfish, and I want to work with people like yourself. And, so we're both LinkedIn nerds, so people can find us on LinkedIn.
Yes, yes. Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Scott. And also thank you for, always showing up on my posts. That really, motivates me, and just being a support.
Yeah,
Also,
you got to keep it classy,
Also, thank you. We those shirt needs to be start selling, because that's a whole brand. That's your whole brand. Having a shirt that has a tie.
Have you had Paul Long on your show?
I actually just scheduled with him, so sometime towards the end of this month he's going to be coming on.
He has a people should go buy his brand. This is just an old softball jersey, but his brand of fundamentalism is a much better brand than my softball jersey. And he is one of the most, he and Grant Gooding, I think, are two of the most intelligent people in Kansas City. And Paul is doing a phenomenal job of not caring what anyone thinks and just doing it. Yeah. And he is creating change and positive change in our community. And so, if people need to tune into your show, and they need to tune into his as well. Yes. And people need to tune into Father Justin today with Aaron Folk and I with Drinks with Leaders. He's an amazing person, along with all of our other guests.
Awesome. Yes, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Scott, for coming on today and spending almost an hour with me. This was definitely an insightful conversation. It definitely went into deeper and deeper, more educated talk. So I am happy and excited. I'm humbled that you came on my show today. Let's keep this momentum going. Keep doing what you're doing. I appreciate you, and I'm humbled to be, your friend on LinkedIn, also being a friend. So thank you.
Amen. Yeah.
So I'll see you on the other side, but have a wonderful day and stay fired up.
I like it.
All right.